Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet. I'm gonna hopefully not ramble for too long. This is, of course, my first podcast, and I want to thank everybody who's actually listening to it. Um, I wanted to kind of tackle a topic that's pretty sensitive, especially amongst the Sonic fans, and basically, I want to talk about what I think makes a good Sonic game. And just kind of keep in mind that these are clearly my opinions. They're not. I'm not stating them as fact. Stating them as a total truth. I'm not a game designer, so I mean, just take everything I say with a grain of salt. And this is just my personal feelings and how I've kind of experienced the franchise over the years. Um, so I feel like a lot of modern Sonic games, they they're trying to do a little bit too much, and they deviate too far from what I call the core tenets of Sonic games. And I feel like every game has tenets to them, things that they continuously implement in every single game that makes those games good. It makes those games what they are. Sonic, Mario, Legend of Zelda, any game really, any franchise, they have a set things that you do with them each and every time. And if you do them well, then no matter how weird or bizarre the title might be, they still feel like that type of game, and they're usually successful, and people like them and find them fun. So with Sonic, what are the tenets that I'm talking about here? And the ones that I feel that they are is that you need a game in Sonic. Sonic has to go fast, but you also have to have some control over him. You can't just have him being slippy slidey all over the place. Uh, the game needs to reward you for exploring. There needs to be good platforming, and if you're gonna, and this one's kind of like a fourth tenet that only really applies to like, you know, Sonic's after the first couple, is that if you're gonna add characters to the game, then those characters kind of have to stick to the tenets as well. Um, yeah, I think those are the four things that really need to be uh, strong in a Sonic game. And I think the first game that really nailed it was Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Um, I mean, Sonic 2 kind of did it as well, where they first introduced Tails. So, in those original games, even though the original Sonic games aren't considered like like some people say they're bad, but they're fun. I mean, I'm not gonna try to decide whether or not they're super good or super bad. I personally love the original trilogy, even if the first two were kind of iffy, and I feel like 3 and Knuckles was kind of like the peak of 2D Sonics for the longest time. Um, you had Sonic and Tails in the first two, or in the second game rather, and then you had Knuckles implemented into the third. The games all had really good level designs that it rewarded exploring. They allowed you to go fast a good majority of the time, had a few platforming segments, and they didn't really bog the game down too much. The platforming segments were pretty swift, and they allowed you to just kind of get back to running around like you wanted to. And the game rewards you for exploring, uh, because you can get alternate pathways, you can get coin or rings rather, power up bubbles, or you can actually get a bonus level to try to get a Chaos Emerald. I mean, everybody knows that you have to explore in Sonic if you're going to get every single Chaos Emerald and try to get the quote unquote best ending that the game has to offer. Uh, so when they introduced the new characters in the original games, they followed the core tenets of the game. Both Knuckles and Tails still are fast. They still allow you to explore, but they allow you to explore in new ways, in ways that only they can. And that's really important. Platforming is still a thing in those games. The characters didn't, like, somehow interfere with how the platforming would be done, I guess. Um, so, and that was kind of like the first point where we really saw a lot of introduction into new characters into the franchise. So what about modern Sonics, right? So it's like, do they follow these core tenets or not? Most of them don't. The two big games that I always get a lot of people telling me that are fantastic and they love them and they think they're really great are Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. And I really don't like to tear these games apart too much because people really do like them, but sometimes you gotta rip the band-aid off. I think these games are bad. Me personally, I don't. They're not the worst of the 3D Sonics, but they're not really good games in themselves. Um, the biggest reason for this is, like I said, they tore apart a lot of the core tenets of Sonic. When you're playing Sonic or you're playing Shadow, those segments of 1 and 2 are actually pretty decent because they allow you to go fast. You can the platforming isn't totally terrible. Yeah, I mean they feel like if you took the original Sonic games and put them into 3D. I mean, all of these games, glitches aside, like I'm not going to get into the glitches because they were like, that's not really important to what I think is a good. I mean, they are important, but not important to what makes a good Sonic game. So yeah, like those Sonic and Shadow kind of nail the traditional aspects of the game, but it's when they threw everything out the window when they started implementing the other characters into the game. When you have like Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, Robotnik, Dr. Eggman, whatever you want to call him, those characters in Big, God, don't even get me started on Big the Cat, and the Robot, that was another one, yeah, I think those are all the characters, I think. They didn't follow any of those core tenets at all when they started adding these characters into the game, because every single character was a new game, and I think that's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. The characters, for the most part, most of them are pretty slow. And there were some instances like in Knuckles levels where he felt like he was going way too fast for the tasks that he was supposed to be doing. Because if anyone who hasn't played these games, when you were playing like Knuckles, for instance, you weren't playing like traditional levels. The whole object of his levels were to go around and collect Master Emerald shards. And that meant you would have to like fly around the stage, or glide around the stage, beat up some enemies, and just basically you're playing a scavenger hunt in every single one of his levels. And most of his levels are either in a confined arena-like level, or you'd have to fly from like, mountain to mountain type of thing to try to find these emeralds. So when you're doing this, it means you're not going fast. And you're not really exploring in a way that's rewarding. Because that's the thing, is a lot of these levels, every character has different levels. They're not playing like the same game like in the original games and just doing things a little bit differently. Their levels are all completely unique that are supposed to allegedly complement their abilities. But how is I guess you could say that him floating around and looking for emeralds complements his floating ability, but wouldn't it be? I think it would be a lot more interesting if we were playing the same stages, but they had been designed with the other characters in mind. So if I was playing through stage 1 again as Knuckles, there would be areas that I'd be able to get to that Sonic can't get to. That was pretty much what Sonic 3 did, and did it well. If you're playing Amy, you're running away from like this evil robot the entire time. You're basically just trying to get from. And I believe he can actually catch you and kill you, too. So you're just trying to get from basically to the end of the level as fast as you can, which sort of is Sonic-esque. Sort of follows the tenets. But it's not... She doesn't go as fast as Sonic. You can't, like, rev roll around and stuff. Like, it's... Her combat's really clunky because she uses this stupid hammer. Tails and Robotnik, they ride around in a mech suit, so it becomes like a really crappy third-person shooter. So you're not really going fast. You're not exploring anything. You're just shooting stuff. Same thing with that robot. I can't even remember his name. Again, pretty standard third-person shooter-like scenario, and it's not really good. It's not really good. You're not going fast. You're not really exploring anything. There's really not a lot of platforming involved. So again, the adding the new characters oftentimes is what destroys a Sonic game. If you look at a game like Sonic Rush for the DS, which is a fantastic game, by the way, I highly recommend someone go and play them, or even Sonic Advance. The Sonic Advance series is really good too, because it's kind of like a spiritual successor or even a reimagining of the original trilogy, the Sonic Advance games. Excuse me. They, of course, have Amy in there, Tails, Sonic. I believe even Knuckles is in the Advance series at one point. But in those games, they are very similar to Sonic 3, where Amy can run just as fast as Sonic, or maybe a little bit slower, but the levels are all designed around these characters. Um, so there's like certain areas that only Amy can get to, certain areas that only Tails can get to, and so on and so forth. Really, really good game design in that aspect, because the Sonic has always been kind of about replayability, uh, using the different characters. I feel, especially after three. So, and then in Sonic Rush, they introduced Blaze the cat, and she handles very similarly to Sonic. The games are designed to, like, those games are perfectly designed for going really, really fast and reward you for going fast. And she has a few interesting new abilities, like she can turn, does like a fire spin type of thing to help kill enemies, but you know, she doesn't detract from the game. She only enhances it. She does the things Sonic can do, but she can kind of do them a little bit better than he can. It's kind of how always the characters have been. They've always been able to do things that are better than other characters a little bit. So they let you go fast. The characters give you different ways to explore the levels. There's platforming. A lot of these crazy spinning trap things. Like Sonic will, like in Sonic 3, you'll grab like a rope that spins you around, and you can fly up to a different area that you wouldn't have been able to reach before if you release it at the right time. So again, multiple pathways. Rewards you for not sucking, but also rewards you for, taking a moment to look at the game from a different angle. So yeah, I mean I think that's really all I need to say about Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Is it's the additional characters don't add anything to the game. They are counter Sonic, really. They don't do things that people want to do in a Sonic game. Especially like Big the Cat. Like, who seriously thought that was a good idea? I think he alone just ruins the adventure franchise. Like, he just hurts. It just hurts so bad. You just play overglorified fishing minigame on the Sega Dreamcast when if you wanted to play fishing, you would just play the Sega Bass Fishing. Like, seriously. Why the fuck would you put a fishing minigame in a Sonic game? In like 6 or 7 levels of that. That's all it is catch Froggy. Ugh. Oh yeah, I kind of want to touch on this. Exploring in the Sonic Adventure games is pretty much futile. There's really nothing to be gained from exploring. It was kind of like it suffered Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time syndrome, where you had like this really big world, but there was really nothing in it. Everything that you were going to do, you found it inside of towns. If you found a random dungeon or two, there really wasn't anything in it. And I wouldn't even say a dungeon. It's just a room that you go into, and there's like a rupee thing in there or something, or maybe you'll get bombs. There was no rewarding exploration. I can't even really recall a time whenever I did play Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 where I got a big reward for exploring. There was like a couple of times, like in the first level, where I'm pretty sure it's right after you chase, the whale chases you, and you jump onto this island. If you go around the island, there's like a 1-up or something behind it. So, I mean, there's a little bit of exploration, but it's like, that's not really deep exploration. It's not like I saw a thing and I found a way to get to the thing. I just walked around the island. So it's just kind of, it felt like superficial exploring. And there might be more examples people can point out to me, but I just don't remember. Because it has been a very long time since I've played them. But I never felt like I got a lot for stopping to look around or to try to approach an area from a different manner. Of course, platforming in the 3D games has been kind of bad. Usually it's mostly been because of the camera angle. But, yeah, the platforming in the Sonic Adventure, and it's just not good. The characters feel really slippery. In a way that almost like everything's on an ice level, I guess is the best way I could describe it. No one handles very satisfying. And I think another thing that hurts with the Sonic franchise is Sonic's trying to do a lot of crazy things, and that doesn't help it at all. So instead of just sticking with what Sonic does best, which is just like kind of like this subtle environmentalist theme to it, where it's like, oh, we got a human who just shows up and he wants to industrialize our planet. They just really kind of go balls to the walls crazy with what they're going to do with Sonic, and sometimes try to make him a little too edgy. Like Sonic 06, for example. I actually think Sonic 06, ironically, is a little bit better of a Sonic game than Sonic Adventures 1 and 2. And I know that's probably going to piss a lot of people off, but it's because the games did better sticking to the tenets of Sonic. Even if a lot of the areas were kind of Legend of Zelda-esque with the open worldness, with how little there really was in it, it allowed you to actually run around and go really fast. Even when you're in the hub world, you could just run around and go really fast. Um, there was actually some reward for exploring around town. You could find rings and stuff like that, which it's kind of like the least rewarding of rewards, I guess, when it comes to it. But I mean, sometimes getting extra one-ups is fine, right? You'd sometimes find a few one-ups and stuff. But exploring has kind of diminished with Sonic over time because they've stopped giving him power-ups for some reason. I never understood why they stopped giving him power-ups. But in Sonic 06, the game tried to do a lot of mock segments. The game tried to give you a lot of time, a lot of places where you could go fast. I think the only thing that Sonic 06 kind of did worse than Sonic Adventures is the combat. I never understood why in the Sonic games they tried to do combat. Like, actually make Sonic do fisticuffs. It never really made any sense. Like, what's wrong with him just jumping on things or hitting things, dashing into them? I don't know. You had, of course, Sonic and Shadow, and Silver. So Sonic and Shadow's things are pretty much very similar. A lot of fast segments, though. Shadow driving cars in a couple of the levels was kind of awkward anyway because the controls weren't super good. Silver again wasn't too slow compared to the other ones. His combat was a little more interesting, I guess. Him having like telekinetic powers was kind of cool, so he could kind of float around and handle enemies in a different manner. So I mean, in that regard, that was kind of cool. If you're going to have like a very janky combat system anyway, giving people different methods of combat is kind of cool. So with him, he could stop bullets and rockets and deflect them back. He could pick up barrels and stuff just by throwing them. So I mean, that was kind of neat. It was kind of cute, whatever. Let's see. Kind of wrote some notes here, and I'm just trying to kind of go on it so I don't deviate too far off of what I was talking about. In Generations was a good example of another modern Sonic game. You had Generations, and then you have Lost World. And I think Lost World got a lot of flack, and I'm not really 100% sure why. I haven't had a chance to play it myself, but I did watch a lot of gameplay footage for it. But with Generations kind of nailed it, where you had 2D Sonic, and then you had 3D Sonic. But they both stuck to the core tenets. You had your classical Sonic, in the 2.5D, level arrangements were kind of what you'd expect for a Sonic game, but you were going pretty fast, platforming was aplenty, different pathways that you could take depending on, your trajectories and stuff and how fast you were going. And then the 3D Sonic ones were pretty much mock segments, I guess, for the most part, from like Sonic 06, but not terrible. So, I mean, there were some platforming sections that they had in there, but mostly you're just running, and you're dipping around and dodging obstacles, running at dashing and jump dashing into enemies, and things like that. So, killing enemies wasn't too hard, and it just felt kind of like a running game, which fits Sonic, right? Same thing where depending on how you handle the situation, if you're going fast enough or if you reacted fast enough, you could go different ways. There was like top and lower pathways for you to discover. And I don't know if there's really any major differences between the two, but sometimes it's fun to go off the beaten path and try something else that you haven't done. Sonic Lost Worlds, I think, was another game that was pretty much a giant mock segment. You were just going really fast, and if Sonic didn't control completely terrible, from what I could tell. Everyone was saying that he didn't control totally shitty. And I think those games look fun. Like, they actually look fun. And I actually went and I picked up Generations, and it's one that I'm going to play. I'm going to play for myself, and I might end up doing a second podcast on this, just a second recording, and talking about my experiences with that game and whether or not I feel like it actually did hold up to the tenants or if it's complete garbage. Colors was another one that I heard was really good. I don't know much about that one, to be perfectly honest, but I heard it was really good, so I picked that one up too. And I'm hoping that, um, that yeah, I'm gonna try those out. I'm just gonna see how it goes. I'll have to pick up Lost World sometime soon if I can find it locally. Otherwise, I might just have to buy it online. Um, but I guess that's kind of all I wanted to get at. I think like I'll just kind of wrap it up with some strong points that I felt I might not have elaborated on earlier. So when I was talking about how the characters need to be intuitive to the game, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the one I always kind of go to because it really did it the best, I feel. I mean, Sonic Advance did it well too, but this is like the most memorable instance. So it was like, I guess maybe it's because like modern gaming, people feel like, you know, if you're going to play the game, you want to have a lot of variety when you're playing it. Instead of just having a game that does something really well, people want to have a game that does a lot of things, even if all those things aren't particularly good. And I'm kind of the opposite. I'd rather a game just stick to its guns. You know, it knows what it does right, and it'd rather just stick with those instead of trying to be a million things at once. And Sonic is kind of one of those games. I mean, it's inherently a platformer, so it should just stay as a platformer. So you have all these levels that are the same for every character. You know, it doesn't matter who you're going to choose, you're going to go through the same levels. But like I said, each character has their own unique abilities, and I really liked that about this game. You know, you had Sonic, who was the fastest of the bunch. He had kind of like a weird double jump thing where he'd like put out a little shockwave, I guess, that made him semi-invulnerable. I never really used it much, but he has it. And of course, he can rev roll, and he's the only one in the roster that can make full use of the elemental shields. Which again, why the hell doesn't Sonic have more power-ups? I never understood this. So you know, if he had the electric shield, he could do a double jump. If he had the bubble shield, he could bounce, and he could also breathe underwater. Oh yeah, and the electric shield also gathered any rings that were near him, so he acted like a magnet, which was really neat. And then the fire shield, which protected him from fire, and if he hit the jump again when he was in the air, he did like a fireball dash, which is kind of cool. So you can kind of hit enemies, and you were a little more protected. So that was his shtick. Like, he was the fastest character, didn't have anything super special about him at face value, but he makes the most out of the power-ups throughout the game. Then you had Tails, who was, I think, the slowest of the group. Or he might have even been he might have been a little faster than Knuckles. I can't remember the order of their speed, but he wasn't quite as fast as Sonic. But he couldn't make use of the elemental shields to their fullest. He could just use them at their base value, use them as an extra hit, collect rings, breathe underwater, be protected from fire. But Tails could fly. So I guess you could technically say he was the slowest of the group, but he allowed you to really, really explore levels. If there were areas that you missed because you didn't react fast enough, like there were sometimes you go down a ramp and fly up the wall or something like that, and then you'd get slingshotted up, and you would have, you know, time to react to go left or right or something to get to a platform. And if you didn't have enough speed, you couldn't quite get there. But if you were Tails, you could fly up, so you were never really too sour about missing a secret. So you could consider Tails like easy mode, quote unquote, of the game, or if you wanted to try to make sure you only got to things the first time around, whatever. And Tails could swim, which was really cool. So water segments weren't a complete total nightmare because you could swim for a short period of time. So that also was really good for exploring water levels too, where if you screwed something up, you could, swim up to something. And then Knuckles, of course, could glide around, but he also had the ability to break through rock walls. So there were certain segments in the game where you could only get to those if you were playing Knuckles. So it allowed you to explore, and you're almost always granted a new path that's completely unique to him, that no other character would ever have. And like Tails, he could climb walls. So if you know there's a secret somewhere but you missed your chance to get it, you can climb up the wall and potentially find it. if you get high up, get high enough, or just float backwards to another platform or something. Basically, just new ways to traverse the stage. So it was pretty seamless, where you could build your world around these characters, and you could have just a tight, consistent experience every time you played the game, and it just incentivized you to stop and look. I mean, I know stopping and looking is kind of counterintuitive to a Sonic game, like where you just want to go fast, but at the same time, the older games were pretty good about rewarding you for taking a moment to kind of look around and see what's there. Be it finding a Chaos Emerald portal or a power up or a one up, coins, rangs, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, and then you take a look at how well crafted these levels were, because they were designed around these three characters, and they were designed to do one thing, which was, or these few things, which is go fast and explore and platform. And it's just kind of sad to see how gross the other characters have, been. They haven't really done anything to enhance the Sonic games at all. Again, you look at a good example of like having multiple characters that follow the tenets. Look at Mario 2. Even though it's not technically a Mario game, you have Luigi, Toad, Peach, and Mario. Mario being the average character, then you have Luigi, who has like a floaty jump. He jumps a little higher and can kind of kick his little feet, keeps airtime. Peach, who floats. And then Toad, I think, is the fastest on foot, but he's also heavier, so he doesn't jump as high. So, though you have characters who are sort of the same, they all have different abilities that allow you to kind of tackle levels in a different manner. If you're Peach, then you can just that's like Tails. You can just easy mode your way through, and just float over a lot of obstacles and enemies that are in your way. Then you have Luigi, who can jump really high, but that can be a blessing and a curse because you're kind of floaty as shit. It's really hard to control your trajectory. You might get hit or even die if you're not careful. Toad, even though he's faster, he's also heavier, so he doesn't jump as high, which could be good or bad depending on the situation. These characters just allow you to tackle the game in a completely different manner, but they all work within the context of the game. They didn't have to redesign the game from the ground up. It's not like you're starting it every time you play Luigi. You're going to play a different set of levels that are supposedly just for Luigi, which is what Sonic Adventure did, and it's disgusting. Yeah. I don't know if that made any sense. I know I had my notes. I was hoping I wouldn't ramble too much, so my thoughts might be pretty scattered, and I apologize for that. It's my first time doing this. I normally just talk to myself, but I do deviate quite a bit. I feel like I'll tackle this too. Like, I'll just disclaimer this one more time. I don't feel that plot, like presentation for Sonic games, I feel is a little forgiving. A couple of videos that I watched about people trying to defend Sonic Adventure 1 or 2, or say which of the two is better than the other when they're both awful games. A lot of times they were trying to say, like, plot is important to the game. One had a better plot than the other. Sonic plots have never really... They've always been kind of comedic to me. I don't know why they try to explain... I don't really know how I want to phrase this. There's only so many ways you can explain why Dr. Robotnik is doing the things he does, and I think that's kind of why Mario excels, is Mario doesn't really try to explain anything. They don't try to give you any underlying, shenanigans. They're just like, oh, it's Bowser, he's just doing his thing again, but now he's doing it in space. Or now he's doing it on an island somewhere, Delfino Island. So, you just kind of accept it. Like, you don't actually want any further explanation to it. You're just like, oh, that Bowser's up to no good again. But here they're like, Sonic 06, like, they had like that Final Fantasy-esque 3D-ness to it. Like, these characters were like hyper realistic, and it was actually kind of terrifying. But it's like, what is this plot that they're even doing? Like, they try to make it so like Sonic is the Iblis trigger or whatever. There's like this giant magma golem. There's just these sci-fi elements that are just so bizarre, and it's hilarious to me. Or in I think it's Sonic Adventure 2, he gets mistaken for Shadow the Hedgehog. And Shadow is gonna give Dr. Eggman the machine that he needs to do whatever, to take over the world or whatever. And there's just a lot of convolution. Sonic Adventure 1, uh, there's that chaos liquid goop that was used to, that was trapped inside the Master Emerald or whatever the fuck it was, and that gets loose, and it causes like cataclysm, like destroys a city, and it's like, what is this? Like, why are the stakes so escalated in Sonic games? Like, I never, like, they're always trying to find some way to kind of like one up what happened in the previous game, and I'm not sure why. You have a game about a fucking anthropomorphic hedgehog, and no one questions the hedgehogs. Like, I know that's funny that I mentioned with the Mario games you don't really question why, but I just find it super funny where you are in a world of humans, and only Sonic and his friends they're like the only anthropomorphized animals in the entire game, or in the entire world, to my knowledge. But no one seems to question it. They just kind of accept it. It's very bizarre to me. Um, and why is it that only, like, why can't the entire human military forces stop Dr. Eggman doing his crazy shit? And how the hell do you confuse a completely, a black and white hedgehog for a blue and tan hedgehog? I don't get it. I don't. Uh, I mean, God, do I even need to talk about Shadow the Hedgehog? Why that's a terrible game? I mean, not a lot of going fast. Really crappy shooting mechanics. And the be edge or don't be edge mechanic was kind of funny as fuck. I won't lie. I think that's hilarious, but it's really dumb. Uh, just fucking Shadow, man. I don't know. I don't know. So I'm sure there's a lot I wanted to talk about, and I'm not remembering it right now. I probably should have wrote down a lot more things that I wanted to talk about. But I guess I'll just end it on this. I think 30 minutes is more than long enough. I'm at like 32 minutes here. But I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on Sonic games, like in general? Like, what do you look for in a Sonic game? What do you think makes a good Sonic game? And what are your favorite Sonic games, and what are your least favorite games? Like, these are things I actually love to talk about this shit. And I would really love to I would love to have people talk with me. Like, I'd actually like to record sessions with other people and kind of bounce back and forth, because it's kind of hard to have a discussion with just yourself, I guess. Because people will probably bring up things that I never even considered. But yeah, I mean, what do you like about Sonic? What do you hate about Sonic? Do you even like Sonic? Just, hit me up and let me know. Maybe sometime we can hold a little get together. We can chat about crappy games and good games. I want to thank you for listening. If you're still here, I know this took a little while, but yeah, thank you for watching or listening. Bye.